Pets. They're our cuddle buddies, our late night snack partners, and sometimes, let's face it, the real rulers of our households. We love them like family, and in return, they shower us with unconditional love, or so we hope. But what happens when our furry, scaly, or feathered friends take a darker turn? In this video, we're diving into 5 shocking and tragic stories of pet owners who lost their lives at the hands, well, paws, claws, and even jaws of their own beloved animals. From affectionate pets gone rogue to misunderstood exotics with deadly instincts, these tales will make you think twice about who or what you let sleep in your bed. A perfectly tragic tale unfolded one Sunday in October 2009. The heroine of this story is Kellyanne Waltz, a gentle-hearted 37-year-old mom of 2 who called Ross Township, Pennsylvania, her home. Originally from Massachusetts, Kellyanne was a true animal lover. She didn't just have a pet dog or a couple of cats. Oh no, her love for animals knew no bounds. Along with her husband Mikal, she turned their acre of land into a full-blown menagerie. Picture it, lions, tigers, cougars, and even a black bear named Teddy. Now, Teddy wasn't just any bear. He'd been part of the Waltz family for nearly a decade, and Kellyanne treated him with the same care she gave all her animals. Teddy lived in a secure cage, and Kellyanne had cleaned it 1,000 times without so much as a hiccup. She thought of him as her big, furry companion, not as a wild animal. But October 4th was no ordinary Sunday. As Kellyanne got ready to clean Teddy's cage that afternoon, she grabbed some dog food, her usual trick to distract the bear. It had worked every other time. "This'll keep you busy, Teddy," she might have said, tossing the food to one side of the enclosure. But on this day, Teddy wasn't in the mood for tricks. Maybe it was the changing season, or perhaps his instincts were stirring. It was the start of hibernation season after all. Whatever it was, something inside Teddy snapped. Kellyanne stepped into the cage as she had so many times before. But before she could even begin her work, Teddy attacked. Now imagine the chaos. Kellyanne's kids, frozen in horror, witnessing the unthinkable. Their mother was in danger, and they ran as fast as their legs could carry them to the neighbor's house. That neighbor was Scott Caston, a school teacher. When the kids banged on his door, Scott thought a wild bear had wandered into town. Grabbing his .357 caliber handgun, he rushed over. What Scott found was worse than he could have imagined. There was Teddy, a massive 350-pound bear, looming over Kellyanne, who lay unconscious. And Teddy wasn't done yet. When he noticed Scott, the bear started moving toward him. Now, Scott was no action hero, but he had a family of his own and a split-second decision to make. He fired a single shot, killing Teddy instantly. With the bear down, he ran to Kellyanne's side and called for help. But by the time paramedics arrived, it was too late. Kellyanne was gone. The news sent shockwaves through the community. Kellyanne had been a beloved figure. Quiet, caring, and passionate about her animals. Her funeral was packed with friends and neighbors, all mourning the loss of a woman who had touched so many lives. In the days that followed, questions swirled. Could this have been prevented? It turned out that Mikal's permits for keeping exotic animals had expired over a year earlier, though inspections had found no issues with the cages. The Pennsylvania Game Commission weighed in, warning that wild animals, no matter how loved, can never truly be tamed. And so, the tale of Kellyanne Waltz serves as a bittersweet reminder. Her love for animals was boundless, but even that love couldn't change the untamed nature of the creatures she cared for. Picture this. It's March 5th, 2019, in the sleepy village of Zov, tucked away in eastern Czech Republic, the kind of place where the loudest sound is a rooster crowing or a tractor puttering along, until Mikal Prasek showed up. Mikal wasn't your average villager. At 34, he'd made quite a name for himself, and not in the good way. You see, Mikal had a hobby, a dangerous, are you out of your mind kind of hobby, keeping lions. Yes, real king of the jungle lions. Not one, but 2. A male and a lioness. Why? Who knows? Maybe he watched The Lion King one too many times. The male lion had been brought in from Slovakia 3 years earlier, and the lioness joined the party in 2018. But Mikal wasn't content with just owning lions. Oh no, he had dreams of breeding them, in his backyard of all places. His homemade enclosures, cobbled together like an overly ambitious DIY project, were his pride and joy. Unfortunately, they lacked proper permits, much like his whole operation. Not that this deterred him. Fines from the authorities? Complaints from terrified neighbors? Ignored. For Mikal, lions were family, albeit 400-pound, clawed, and fanged family. To really rub salt in the wound, Mikal didn't just keep his lions hidden away. Nope. He walked them. Picture a man strolling through a village with a lion on a leash as though it were a golden retriever. Unsurprisingly, this didn't go well. In one infamous incident, a cyclist collided with the lioness during one of these jaunts, ending up in the hospital. The authorities chalked it up as a traffic accident, but for the villagers, it was just one more reason to dread Mikal's menagerie. For years, the situation was at a standstill. The authorities wanted the lions gone, but legal loopholes and the lack of proper animal sanctuaries left them stuck. And Mikal, he dug in his heels, refusing access to his property. It was a stalemate that left the entire village on edge. Then came that fateful morning. Around 7 a.m., Mikal's father made a grim discovery: his son's lifeless body inside the male lion's cage. The door was locked from the inside. What had possessed Mikal to enter the enclosure? We'll never know. The police arrived, faced with a chilling task: retrieving Mikal's body from a cage containing two very alive and very dangerous lions. Here's the thing about lions: they're not oversized house cats. These are apex predators, built for the kill, and no one was about to risk being their next meal. The police made the heart-wrenching decision to shoot both lions to secure the scene. As if the tragedy couldn't get worse, it was later revealed that the lioness was pregnant. Mikal's death marked the end of his controversial hobby, but it also brought relief to many villagers who had lived in fear for years. In the aftermath, the mayor of Zov expressed hope that this tragic event would spur stricter laws on keeping predatory animals. And indeed, the Czech government began reconsidering its wildlife regulations. After all, the country had a reputation as a hub for illegal wildlife smuggling, a status it could no longer afford to ignore. Mikal Prasek's story is one of obsession gone too far, a cautionary tale of what happens when humans blur the lines between domesticity and the wild. It's a grim reminder: lions belong in the savannah, not in someone's backyard. It was July 17th, 2006, in the calm, tree-lined neighborhood of Salem Township, Pennsylvania. The sun was out, the birds were chirping, and Sandra Pisan, a 50-year-old woman with a deep love for her unusual pets, was preparing to visit her pack of 9 wolf-dog hybrids. These weren't your run-of-the-mill fluffy pups, mind you. These were hulking, untamed beasts, half wolf and half dog, living in a large fenced enclosure in Sandra's backyard. Sandra adored her hybrids. For nearly a decade, they'd been the center of her world. They had toys, an igloo, balls, a plastic playhouse, and plenty of space to roam. She treated them like cherished family, oblivious to the storm brewing within her beloved pack. Over the last year, the animals had been acting out, snarling, restless, and even attacking one of their own, a longtime member of the pack. Yet Sandra, ever the optimist, chalked it up to growing pains. What she didn't realize was that her relationship with these animals was built on a razor's edge. You see, wolf-dog hybrids are unpredictable. They're not quite pets, not quite wild. They come with all the charm of a domestic dog, but carry the unrelenting instincts of a wolf. Add to that a pack dynamic, where dominance is a constant contest, and, well, let's just say things can go south quickly. Sandra, though, wasn't fazed. She didn't have a state license for these hybrids, but she got by with regular dog licenses. Her passion for them, she claimed, was rooted in her Native American heritage, a connection she felt strongly about even if her neighbors didn't share her enthusiasm. To them, Sandra's pack was less spiritual bond and more neighborhood nightmare. The smell of roadkill she sometimes fed them, unbearable. The rumors that they were unvaccinated and unneutered, even worse. But Sandra, she loved her pack with all her heart. She'd enter their pen daily to feed them, chat with them, and even invite visitors to marvel at the animals she considered her kindred spirits. Until that fateful morning, Sandra was supposed to meet her daughter, Crystal, for breakfast. When she didn't show up, Crystal drove to her mom's house, expecting perhaps a forgotten alarm or a missed call. What she found instead was a scene straight out of a horror movie. Sandra's body lay in the enclosure, lifeless, covered in deep gashes and bites. Blood stained the ground. The pack, usually playful or indifferent, was on edge, pacing and snarling along the fence. When authorities arrived, the situation was tense. The hybrids seemed poised for attack, their wild instincts dialed up to 11. To retrieve Sandra's body, police had no choice but to tranquilize and euthanize all 9 animals. It was a tragic end, not just for Sandra, but for the creatures she had dedicated her life to. The autopsy confirmed the heartbreaking truth. Sandra had been mauled to death by the very animals she loved. Experts speculated that the attack stemmed from a power struggle within the pack. Perhaps one or more of the hybrids decided it was time to challenge Sandra for dominance. Her death wasn't exactly a shock to those who knew her. Many had warned Sandra about the dangers of keeping such animals. Her friend Brian Gallagher admitted as much, noting that while Sandra had a good heart, her passion had blinded her to the risks. This tragedy left a grim reminder in its wake. Wild instincts don't fade with love alone. It also highlighted the pressing need for stricter regulations on owning exotic animals like wolf-dog hybrids. Sandra's story is one of devotion, danger, and the fine line between the human desire to connect with nature and nature's untamed reality. Sometimes the wild is best left wild. The next one is a tale from the rolling plains of Free State, South Africa. Back in November 2011, picture Marius Els, a strapping 40-year-old farmer and former army major, living his dream of raising one of the most unusual pets you could imagine. Forget dogs and cats. Marius went big, real big. His baby was none other than a 1.2-ton hippopotamus named Humphrey. Now, Humphrey wasn't just any hippo. He was an internet darling, famous for videos of him frolicking in the water, letting Marius ride on his back like some sort of modern-day Tarzan. To Marius, Humphrey was more than a pet. He was family. "He's like a son to me," Marius would say, beaming with pride. But let's rewind a bit. Humphrey's story began when he was rescued as a calf from a flood and taken in by another family. Cute, right? But as Humphrey grew, and oh, did he grow, he became too much to handle. Enter Marius, who swooped in to give Humphrey a 400-acre paradise, complete with a custom-built lake where the hippo could splash to his heart's content. It was the stuff of Disney movies, until it wasn't. Marius doted on Humphrey, feeding him apples, brushing his massive teeth, and even riding on his back. While the farmer was convinced he had tamed Africa's most dangerous animal, his neighbors weren't so sure. They watched in alarm as Humphrey occasionally wandered off to chase golfers on the nearby course, or worse, reportedly took out some livestock. "That hippo's a ticking time bomb," they'd mutter, but Marius would just laugh it off, declaring, "People don't get it. You can have a bond with a hippo, just like with a dog or cat." And then there was that time Humphrey nearly went full National Geographic. A man and his grandson, canoeing on Marius's farm, found themselves face to face with Humphrey, who wasn't in the mood for visitors. The duo had to scramble up a tree and stay put for 2 hours until Marius arrived to defuse the situation. With an apple, no less. Classic Marius, always the hero. But the warnings kept piling up. Marius's wife Louise had her doubts. "It's not safe," she'd argue, but Marius's confidence was unshakable. He truly believed their bond made him untouchable. Then came that fateful day in November. Marius was found dead, his body battered and submerged in the river. Ironically, the very river where he'd once saved Humphrey. The details were gruesome. Multiple bite wounds, the kind only a hippo could deliver. It was a shocking and tragic end to a man who had dared to believe he could tame the untamable. The world was stunned, but those who knew Marius weren't entirely surprised. They'd seen the red flags and tried to warn him, but Marius, ever the optimist, brushed them aside. "Humphrey would never hurt me," he'd said. Famous last words. Humphrey, the hippo who had been loved like a son, had ultimately succumbed to his wild instincts. The tale of Marius and Humphrey is a stark reminder. Wild animals are just that, wild, and no matter how close the bond, nature always has the final say. So, what's the moral of this story? Maybe stick to Labradors and tabby cats. They don't weigh a ton, and they're a lot less likely to chase golfers. It was early September 2011, a time when the Idul Fitri holidays brought joy and celebration to Indonesia. On Batam Island, a tropical paradise brimming with lush landscapes and rich traditions, lived Andre Lumboga, a 50-year-old man with a penchant for adventure and an unusually large pack of 9 dogs. Yes, 9. Quite the canine collection, right? Now, Andre was all set to celebrate the holidays in style, planning a 2-week trip to Monado in North Sulawesi. Imagine the excitement, suitcases packed, itinerary ready, and dreams of feasting and family time. But there was one glaring problem. Andre, in all his excitement, forgot or neglected to arrange a sitter for his dogs. No food, no water, no nothing. Yikes. Still, off he went, leaving his furry companions to fend for themselves. Now, here's where things get grim. You know how they say hunger makes even friends fight? Well, these dogs took that to a whole new level. Desperation set in, and before long, the weakest among them became a literal meal for the others. Survival of the hungriest, you could say. Fast forward 14 days. It's August 30th, and Andre's back from his adventure. Probably humming a holiday tune, he steps into his home, blissfully unaware of the horror awaiting him. The dogs, now feral from starvation and madness, didn't see their owner. They saw dinner. What happened next? Let's just say it wasn't a happy reunion. Days passed without any sign of Andre, which raised some eyebrows in the neighborhood. His luggage, oddly pristine, sat untouched outside his house like a sad little time capsule. Eventually, a concerned neighborhood guard decided to check things out. And oh boy, did he wish he hadn't. The stench hit him first. A foul, unmistakable warning that something was very, very wrong. Police were called, and what they found could make a horror writer blush. Andre's remains were scattered throughout the house, with his skull chilling in the kitchen like some grim centerpiece. Meanwhile, the dogs, still in survival mode, had turned territorial, snarling and snapping at anyone who dared enter. Faced with no other choice, the officers subdued the pack. Tragically, 3 of the 7 surviving dogs had to be put down, while the rest were captured and taken away. Their future remained uncertain, though it was clear their lives had been irrevocably scarred. The neighborhood was rocked by the news. Some neighbors admitted they'd noticed the smell but had brushed it off as a dead rat. Now, they were grappling with shock and sadness. How could something so unthinkable happen right in their backyard? The local police chief, Ariana, explained the heartbreaking reality. The dog's attack was a desperate act of survival after 2 weeks without food or water. So what's the takeaway here? If you've got pets, treat them with love and care, because neglect doesn't just hurt them, it can spiral into a nightmare no one wants to imagine. And if you're ever planning a trip, let's just say pet sitting should be top of the to-do list.